You're not my future. You're just fun, my girlfriend said when she rejected my proposal in public. I smiled, paid the bill, and left without arguing. Weeks later, she showed up crying at my door, ring in hand, begging for a second chance. I had a better idea. Hey, Reddit, I was the guy who did everything right in a relationship. Planned, supported, showed up, all of it. Then the woman I loved used me as stage decor to boost her ego. So I said nah, kept my pride, and stepped back. But she wasn't done performing yet. Before I get into the mess, let me start from the beginning. Names Riven Hale, early 30s. Project manager in tech, regular family, nothing dramatic. I'm sarcastic by default, and I don't chase people who disrespect me. I'd been with Zoya Vale for 3 years. She was the type everyone noticed. Pretty, loud charm, always center stage without trying. Our relationship worked because I built, and she received. I didn't mind back then. Thought that was love. Romano's was packed that night. Noise everywhere, lights bright enough to make everything look extra polished. I'd planned the proposal down to the minute. I slipped Jules, the manager, a tip earlier that week so he'd dim the lights when I stood. When we walked in, he gave me a quick nod like the plan was locked. I had the ring in my jacket. Speech ready. Hands steady even though my chest felt tight. I wasn't scared she'd say no. I was more worried I'd mess up the words. Not that it mattered in the end. Dinner went normal. She talked about a coworker she couldn't stand. I nodded, waiting for Jules's signal. Eventually, he passed by and did the small chin tilt. Time to go. I stood up. She looked confused for half a second. Then her eyes widened with the oh no kind of realization. People around us noticed instantly. I dropped to one knee, opened the box, and delivered the speech exactly how I practiced. Clear, steady, nothing cheesy. She froze for a beat, then she laughed. Loud. Sharp. The kind of laugh people use to cover embarrassment. A woman next to us actually cringed away from her plate. Zoya waved her hand like I just asked her to split the bill. I'm not trading my freedom for a ring. Don't tie me down like that. Let's stay casual. Romano's went dead quiet. Fork stopped midair. Jules froze, holding 2 plates. Someone across the room whispered, "Oh, damn." I stayed kneeling for another second. Then something in me shifted. Not heartbreak, just a switch flipping from caring to watching. I stood up slowly, closed the ring box like I was shutting a kitchen drawer, and gave her a small, calm smile. The kind that makes people uncomfortable because it shouldn't be that calm in a moment like that. You're absolutely right, I said. Smart move. No anger, no sarcasm. Just flat truth. She blinked like she expected tears or some dramatic speech about destiny. Instead, I signaled the waiter. He approached carefully, like I might explode. I paid the full bill, tipped way too much out of habit, thanked Jules, and walked out. Didn't say a single extra word to her. Outside was colder than I expected. I was halfway to my car when I heard her heels clacking behind me. Riven, what the hell was that? You're just walking out? She was angry, but underneath it I heard confusion. The kind that shows up when someone loses control of the script they thought they were writing. I turned around, hands in my pockets, completely steady. Casual, I said. Cool. I'll match your energy. The look she gave me was a mix of offended and scared. Like she didn't know if I was serious or punishing her. I didn't clarify. I didn't comfort. I got into my car and left. The drive home was quiet roads and dim streetlights. I didn't play music. I didn't talk to myself. I let the silence take up space. After a few minutes, I tapped my phone and called Dax Park, my closest friend. He picked up on the second ring. "What's up?" he asked. Sounded like he was walking somewhere loud. "She laughed at the ring," I said. In public. He went quiet long enough that I knew he was processing, not judging. Then he said, "So she laughed at the ring in public and wants you to chase. Cute. You chasing?" "Nope." "Good. Go home. Don't text her tonight." I didn't promise anything. I just said, "Yeah," and hung up. When I got home, the place was dark. I put the ring box on the kitchen counter next to my keys. No dramatic gesture, just placed it down like it was any other object. I sat on the couch in the dark. No TV, no lights. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was just done auditioning. I woke up the next morning to the usual buzz on my phone. A good morning text from Zoya, same as every day for 3 years. Normally, I replied within seconds. That morning, I just stared at the screen. Not angry, not sad, just done explaining things she already knew. I set the phone down without answering. I didn't send my usual check-in at 9. I didn't ask how her commute was. I didn't send the random memes she always pretended to be surprised by, even though she expected them. I kept my replies short and polite when she texted later. Nothing rude, nothing heated. Just bare minimum. The energy she said she wanted. She didn't notice at all that day. She was used to my attention showing up on schedule like a utility. By day 2, she sent, "Are you busy?" I answered 4 hours later with, "Yep, work's heavy." No emojis, no follow-up. That was apparently still normal enough that she didn't question it. She talked about her lunch, her coworker, her nail appointment, whatever. I didn't add anything. Just simple acknowledgments she couldn't twist into an argument. By midweek, she finally started to feel something was off. "Why are you acting weird?" she texted right after lunch. I read it once, put my phone down, finished a meeting, went to grab water, then answered, "I'm taking your advice," keeping it light. 10 minutes passed. Then, what does that even mean? I didn't explain. I just let it sit. If she wanted casual, she'd get the unedited version of it. That week, I went back to my old routines like someone flipping on a switch. Gym sessions I'd skipped for months. Late nights catching up on projects I'd abandoned because she always wanted to call. I met up with Dax one evening just to shoot the breeze at the gym and grab a late coffee after. He took one look at me while we stretched and said, "You look like you slept for once." "I did," I said. "No 3-hour emotional work shifts today." He didn't need details. He already knew the whole story from the night before. At the cafe after, he leaned back in his chair and said, "She reaching out yet?" "Yeah, she thinks I'm being weird." He nodded the same way someone does when they get a puzzle piece they expected. Casual is a two-way street. If she wants the vibe, she gets the bill. I smirked. Exactly. That was the tone of the week. Steady, simple, controlled. No edge. Meanwhile, Zoya tried every trick she thought would reel me back in without making it look like she cared too much. She'd send long paragraphs about her day, slipped in with lines like, "You're being distant," or "Is something wrong with us?" She expected me to engage, launch into reassurance, guide the conversation like I always did. Instead, I kept the same line. Short, polite replies that gave her nothing to pull on. Her frustration started bleeding into her social media. She posted one of those vague stories with her face half lit by her window, and the caption, "Finally choosing freedom over pressure." Mira and her other orbiting friends responded with the usual comments, "You deserve better," "Your peace matters," all the recycled lines you can buy in bulk from people who barely know what happened. I didn't respond. I didn't even watch the whole story. I clicked past it and went back to my spreadsheet. I skim-tapped through most of what she posted. Friends sent screenshots when I missed something. The funny part was how predictable it all felt. Zoya liked the idea of being effortless, but she'd spent 3 years being cushioned by my consistency. Once it disappeared, she started wobbling fast. She wasn't built for casual when it wasn't under her control. By Friday, she asked if I wanted to do something over the weekend. I told her I already had plans, which was true. Dax and I were going to hit the gym again, and maybe walk around downtown after. Nothing major, just normal life. Something I hadn't had much of because I used to arrange my schedule around hers. "Oh," she wrote back. "I thought we always did Saturdays." "Keeping it flexible," I replied. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then she sent a single. K. That told me everything I needed to know. She was used to me building the structure so she could relax inside it. The second she had to deal with the same looseness she claimed to want, she didn't know where to stand. That weekend, I didn't hear much from her. A few short messages. A couple of passive-aggressive likes on my old posts. A missed call I didn't return. I wasn't avoiding her. I was just not rushing. By week 3, it escalated. Flirty photos with heavier makeup and attention bait angles. Captions like "living my best life" and "finally choosing myself." The comments filled up within minutes. Mira was the loudest, dropping lines like, "Yes, queen," and "freedom looks good on you." The rest of her friend group piled on with the usual empty hype. I didn't react to a single post. I didn't even open the comments section after the first 2. I kept my accounts quiet. No revenge posts, no quotes, no vague lines, nothing. That's when she switched tactics. The coincidences started small. I went to the gym early one morning, my normal time, and she showed up 10 minutes later in new workout clothes like she had a camera on me. She walked over with this bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, wow, you're here?" she said. "Yeah," I said, adjusting my headphones. "Been here for 20 minutes. She tried making small talk, hovering by the weights. I kept my replies short, polite, not rude. When she lingered too long, I added, "You tracking my schedule now? That doesn't feel casual." She gave a sharp little laugh that didn't match her face. "Don't be dramatic. It's a public gym." "Exactly," I said, and went back to my set. 2 days later, I went to a coffee shop before work, the one I'd gone to for years. She walked in 20 minutes after me, wearing a blazer like she was in some commercial. Oh my God, Riven, what are you doing here? Coffee, I said. What are you doing here? She paused half a beat too long. Passing by. Cool. I stood up, closed my laptop, and grabbed my stuff. Enjoy your morning. She tried to cover her confusion, but it clung to her face as I walked out. That afternoon she sent, "Are you avoiding me?" "Not avoiding," I wrote. "Just not chasing." She waited 2 hours, then wrote, "You're punishing me." I answered, "Punishment is control. This is just me not auditioning anymore." She left that on read for the rest of the night. Later that night, I got a new message, one I didn't expect. Kira Vale, Zoya's younger sister. We weren't close, but she'd always been straightforward. Nothing like her sister's friend circle. She never played along with Zoya's dramatics. Her message was short. "You weren't wrong to propose. Can we meet? There's something you need to know." No emojis, no fluff, just the truth in plain text. I sat there for a second, reading it again. Kira wasn't the type to stir trouble unless something serious was behind it. I typed back, "When?" She replied instantly, "Tomorrow. Not at your place. Somewhere neutral." I agreed. Whatever she wanted to tell me, it wasn't going to be small. And from the tone of her messages, it didn't sound like she was on Zoya's side anymore. Kira picked a neutral spot, a small outdoor cafe near the library. Public enough that nothing could spiral into drama, quiet enough for a real conversation. She was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table, hoodie up, hands wrapped around a cup she probably hadn't taken a sip from. "Hey," I said, sitting down. She nodded once. "Thanks for coming." Kira wasn't the type to waste time, and she didn't. She looked around, made sure no one familiar was nearby, then leaned in. "I'm just going to tell you everything," she said. "You can do whatever you want with it." I waited. She exhaled. Zoya's been using fear of marriage as a shield. She doesn't actually believe any of the things she said at Romano's. Not the way she said them. I stayed quiet. "She says she's scared of commitments," Kira continued. "But really, she likes having you as the stable person while she keeps doors open everywhere else. Attention, backup plans, whatever makes her feel big." She made a small hand gesture, searching for the right word. She treats it like a game. I didn't react. It didn't surprise me as much as it should have. Kira kept going. "And the restaurant thing? It wasn't panic. She told me later she wanted to reset the power. That's what she called it. She said rejecting you in public would remind you that she's the one deciding the pace." I felt something settle inside me, like a puzzle piece dropping into place. Kira looked down at her hands. "She didn't think you'd stay calm. She thought you'd break, cry, beg, or promise her some big change. Something she could hold over you." I let out a slow breath. "She planned that?" Kira nodded. "Mira helped. Mira told her, if he really loves you, he'll prove it. Make him fight. Make him push harder." They were talking about it for a week. Mira kept saying you were getting too comfortable, too confident. They wanted to shake you. I leaned back in my chair. So the whole thing was staged? Not fear? Not confusion? No, it was a move. It was a... She met my eyes as she said it. Then she added, "And there's more." I waited. "She's been browsing apartments, asking me what neighborhoods I think are good solo starter options. Looking at leases. She said she wanted a backup plan in case she needed space from you after the proposal." I blinked once. "Before the proposal?" "Yeah," Kira said. "Before." So she'd already been planning an exit strategy while I was planning a future. Kira looked sick saying it. She wanted to see how much she could push before you snapped back into chasing. That's how she and Mira worded it. They thought humiliating you in a busy restaurant would make you double down on proving something. I stayed silent. There was nothing to respond with that wouldn't sound too calm or too sharp. "And when you didn't react the way they expected," Kira said, "she panicked. All this casual stuff she's posting? She's trying to make you jealous without admitting she messed up." I nodded once. "Makes sense." Kira paused, then leaned in again. "I'm telling you this because I'm tired of watching her treat people like props, and because I don't think she's done yet." "Meaning?" "Mira's pushing her to stage another scene," Kira said. "Something public again. Something to force you to engage. Mira thinks if she can make you feel embarrassed enough, you'll come back swinging emotionally." I raised an eyebrow. "Embarrass me how?" "Not sure," Kira said. "But I heard them talking. Mira said if you don't step up, they'll create a moment you can't ignore. Something that makes you look like the bad guy if you walk away." I took a slow breath. So they're doubling down. "Yeah." I looked past her at the street. People walked by, just living their own lives. No idea the kind of nonsense happening at the table in the corner. "Riven," Kira said quietly. You weren't wrong to propose. You weren't the problem. She is. Maybe, I said. But I'm definitely done being her project. Akira gave a tiny relieved nod, like she'd been hoping I'd say that. I took out my phone and sent one quick text to Dax. It wasn't fear. It was a move. He replied instantly. Knew it. Your call now. I pocketed the phone and stood. Kira looked up. What are you going to do? Nothing dramatic, I said. Just not being a prop anymore. She nodded. Good. She doesn't deserve a reaction. I paid for both coffees even though she barely touched hers. She didn't argue. She looked tired. Not for herself, but for the mess her sister was creating. As I walked away from the cafe, the air felt clearer. Not lighter, just honest. It wasn't panic at Romano's. It was strategy. And now that I had the full picture, I knew exactly how much of myself I'd give her. None. After talking to Kira, everything became clearer. I didn't make announcements or have some dramatic confrontation with Zoya. I just pulled back further. Short answers when she texted. No explanation when she called and I didn't pick up. No emotional scaffolding for her moods. It wasn't punishment. It was absence. And she felt it instantly. 2 weeks after the talk with Kira, she ramped it up again. Louder outfits, heavier filters, captions like, moving my way, and new energy only. Mira and the usual circle hyped every post. It was obvious what she was aiming for. If she couldn't get my attention directly, she'd try to get it sideways. Then she escalated. Dax invited me to a friend night at a casual spot we all used to hang out at. Nothing fancy, just a place to relax, laugh, and talk nonsense for a couple hours. I walked in expecting a normal evening. Instead, I saw Zoya at the bar, Mira right next to her, both acting surprised in the fakest way imaginable. Zoya flipped her hair and waved like it was a runway. Oh, Riven's here. Didn't know you were coming. Her voice carried across half the room. Mira's eyes swept over me with that smug look she always had, the one that said she thought she could rewrite any story if she talked fast enough. I nodded once. Dax invited me. Mira let out a sharp laugh. Convenient timing. I didn't respond. I walked past them and joined Dax at the table. He gave me a look that said he already sensed what kind of night this was about to be. Zoya followed a minute later, Mira glued to her side. She didn't even pretend to talk to anyone else, just hovered near our group, loud enough to be overheard. She leaned on the back of my chair. Haven't seen you all week. I didn't turn around. Busy. She crossed her arms. You're being weird again. Keeping it casual, I said. That's what you wanted. That line landed harder than she expected. Her face tightened. Mira stepped in like she'd been waiting for her cue. This is childish, Mira said. You're acting insecure. I finally looked up at her. Nobody hired you as her lawyer. Sit down. A couple of people nearby snorted at how fast her smile dropped. Mira shot back. You're insecure. That's why you're doing all this. I stayed calm. Insecure men beg. I'm just done. The room went quiet enough that even Zoya paused. She looked between me and Mira like she wasn't sure who was supposed to be leading her in this scene. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and told Dax I'd text him later. He gave a subtle nod. He understood. As soon as I walked outside, I heard rapid footsteps behind me. Zoya caught up, grabbing my arm like she thought I'd disappear if she didn't. Riven, stop walking away from me, she hissed. You can't just ignore me and act like I'm the problem. I'm not ignoring you, I said. I'm just not entertaining any more games. She stepped in front of me to block the sidewalk. You're supposed to fight for me. I stared at her for a beat. Fight for someone who laughed at me? That's not love. That's self-harm. The words hit her so hard she actually stepped back. She shook her head like she didn't hear me right. You're twisting everything. You're making me look crazy. You're doing that yourself, I said. She clenched her jaw, glancing over her shoulder toward the windows, where our friends were inside watching. She lowered her voice, but it came out shaky. I only rejected you because you were getting too comfortable. I wanted to see how much you cared. You wanted a reaction you could control, I said. You didn't get it. She pressed her palms together like she was trying to keep herself from yelling. Then show me something now. Fight. Do something. Anything. I looked at her, really looked. Everything Kira told me was written across her face. Panic, confusion, entitlement, and the desperate need for an audience. You want something public? I asked. Her eyes snapped up. Yes. Fine. I stepped back. If you want this so bad, propose to me tomorrow. Right in front of everyone. She froze. Completely. What? She whispered. You heard me, I said. If you want seriousness, you step up. You propose. Make it loud. Make it clear. No more hiding behind excuses. She stared like I'd just spoken in a language she didn't understand. I can't do that, she said. Then stop expecting me to do all the work. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words. Just shock. Behind her, I could hear the bar door open. Mira stepped outside like she was checking where her puppet had gone. Zoya turned toward the noise, and the panic rushed across her face faster than she could hide it. She whipped back to me. You're being ridiculous. No, I said. I'm being done. She raised her voice then, finally letting the frustration crack out. You'll regret this. Everyone will know what you did to me. I didn't even blink. Tomorrow, I said. If you really want this, propose in front of everyone. I walked away before she could say another word. Behind me, her voice carried down the street. Angry, loud, confused. But she wasn't yelling for me. She was yelling because the one thing she counted on, my chase, was gone. I showed up to Romano's the next day because I already knew she'd be there. Kira's warning, the way Zoya reacted outside the bar, the sudden need for a public audience, it all pointed to one place. Romano's was her stage, and she wasn't done performing. When I walked inside, the setup was obvious immediately. Zoya was at the same table we'd sat at during the proposal, dressed like she was ready for a magazine cover. Mira sat on her left, pretending to scroll her phone. Two more of their friends were positioned nearby, acting casual but looking up too often. Even Jules, the manager, looked irritated, like he'd been forced into hosting another scene he never asked for. Zoya spotted me and straightened up instantly. Riven, she called out, loud enough for half the room to hear. Can we talk? The tone was rehearsed, hurt but hopeful, the kind that plays well to strangers who only hear one side of a story. I approached the table slowly, keeping enough distance that I wasn't sucked into whatever script she'd written overnight. Mira watched me with that smug, calculating stare, already waiting to insert herself if the scene didn't go according to plan. Zoya stood, pressing her fingers to her eyes like she'd been crying. The tears were too clean, too quick. I'm so sorry, she said, voice trembling for effect. I didn't mean to hurt you. I made a mistake. A huge one. A couple at a nearby table glanced over, sensing drama. Exactly what she wanted. Before I could respond, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small ring box. Cheap, flimsy, clearly bought a few hours ago. She snapped it open with a shaky breath. I had thrown her a dare the night before. By morning, she had spun it into a production. Then, like she was auditioning for a part, she dropped to one knee. People gasped, phones tilted. Mira's eyes lit up like she directed the whole thing. Riven Hale, Zoya said loudly. I love you. I was scared before, but I'm ready now. I'm ready to commit. Please, marry me. It would have fooled a stranger. Too bad I wasn't one. I didn't let her finish whatever speech Mira had whispered into her ear that morning. Stand up, I said. This isn't a show. The room froze. Zoya's face cracked. Shock first, then panic. She looked around like maybe the audience would save her. She stayed on her knee. Please don't do this, she said, forcing her voice to shake again. I'm trying. I'm really trying. Stand up, I repeated. We're not doing another performance. She slowly rose, clutching the cheap ring like it could glue everything back together. Riven, I was scared. I grew up with divorced parents. My childhood was a mess. I panicked at the restaurant. I didn't mean any of it. I'm not mocking your trauma, I said. But trauma explains fear. It doesn't explain laughing at me on a stage you created. A few people murmured. Mira stiffened. Zoya swallowed hard. I'm trying to fix this. I'm giving you everything you wanted. No, I said. You're giving me everything you think the crowd wants. That's different. Her lip trembled. For real this time. The edges of her performance were falling apart. Riven, please, she whispered. Don't leave. Not like this. We're done, I said. That was it. No speech, no rant, no emotional detour. Just the truth laid out in one line. She went stiff for a second, then snapped into the next mask. Victim mode. Her voice rose sharp and shaky. He pressured me, she shouted, looking around the restaurant for sympathy. He's controlling. He manipulates everything. People stared, unsure what they'd just walked into. Mira jumped in right on cue, stepping between us. You don't get to twist it back on her, Mira said. You're making her look crazy when she's trying to fix things. I raised my voice once, just enough to cut through the noise, not enough to yell. You rejected me in public. Now you're trying to use public to undo it. I'm not your prop. The room went silent again. Zoya's face crumpled, and for once Mira didn't have a fast enough comeback. She opened her mouth like she had something ready, but nothing landed. She pointed at me instead. You're heartless. You just want to feel powerful. I looked at her and said, You're not the main character. You're just the editor of a bad script. A couple people near the bar coughed into their hands, hiding reactions. Zoya's friends froze completely. Zoya let out a raw sound, part anger, part panic. You're making a mistake. Everyone will know what you did to me. I'll tell them everything. I didn't slow down. Tell them the truth, I said. If you can find any. And with that, I turned and walked out of Romano's. Behind me, her voice echoed through the restaurant doors. Accusations, insults, desperate lines she probably thought would hit harder if said loudly. But none of it stuck. None of it mattered. None. Because she wasn't yelling for me. She was yelling because the stage collapsed and the script burned. And for the first time since I met her, she had no audience left to perform for. By noon the next day, Zoya had already rewritten the entire Romano's meltdown into a tragic epic where she was the wounded heroine. She posted a long story online, a wall of text over a sad-looking selfie. The caption made it clear she was going for maximum sympathy. According to her version, I had humiliated her, forced her to propose in public, and abandoned her in front of witnesses. She added a line about being emotionally exhausted by his unpredictability, which was ironic considering she'd spent the last month turning our relationship into a stage play. Within minutes, Mira swarmed the comments like she'd been waiting in a bunker for this moment. She dropped paragraphs of rehearsed nonsense. He pressured her. He's twisting the narrative. She deserves someone who appreciates her independence. He always acted superior. It was clear they had built this script together overnight. I wasn't surprised. Honestly, I expected it. What I didn't expect was the amount of people tagging me, asking if I wanted to say anything. I stayed silent for an hour. Then I finally posted one single reply. Short, plain, and pinned to the top so no one could pretend they missed it. She left the relationship before I left the restaurant. No arguing, no second post, no thread, just that one sentence. And then I logged off. The comments under her post froze for a moment. People didn't know how to respond to something that calm. No emotion, no blame, no theatrics. Just a simple timeline they couldn't spin. It didn't take long for the cracks to start. People began asking real questions. What happened at the restaurant? Why did you laugh? Why was Mira filming? Zoya didn't answer any of it. Mira tried, but it all sounded rehearsed and defensive. Then Kira stepped in. One sentence. That's all she dropped under Zoya's story. No emojis, no padding, no escape route. There was a group chat. She planned the rejection. Mira coached it. Silence. Literal silence. Comments froze. Likes stopped. People reread. Someone asked Kira to clarify. She didn't. She walked away digitally just like she walked away in real life when Zoya spiraled. Zoya tried to delete the comment, but it had already been screenshotted a dozen times. Shared, reposted, passed around. And just like that, the tide flipped. People who usually hyped her up suddenly went quiet. A few unfollowed her publicly. Someone even commented, "This is messy. I didn't know it was like that." Mira tried to jump back in, but everything she wrote looked flimsy next to Kira's blunt truth. Zoya lashed out in every direction. She sent Kira a barrage of messages accusing her of betrayal, jealousy, and trying to make her look bad. Kira blocked her without replying. That said more than anything else. Around mid-afternoon, Dax sent me a series of screenshots. The meltdown was impressive. Zoya was arguing with strangers. Mira was arguing with Kira's friends. Their group chat had apparently imploded. People were dropping out of it like it was a sinking ship. At the bottom of the last screenshot, Dax wrote, "Clean. Now vanish. Let her yell at air." I replied with a single thumbs up. That was the end of it for me. No victory lap. No gloating. Just distance. A week passed before the next knock on my door. Not a text. Not a call. A physical knock. I opened the door and found Zoya and Mira standing there. Zoya looked tired, like she hadn't slept properly in days. Mira stood beside her like she was still playing defense, but her confidence had cracks in it. "We need closure," Zoya said, voice small but trying to sound firm. "No, you need an audience," I said. "Big difference." She stepped forward. "Riven, please. You're really throwing this away? Everything we built? You threw it away." I leaned on the doorframe. "I just cleaned up," Mira scoffed. "Wow. Cold. Heartless." "Heartless is a weird word for not tolerating disrespect," I said. "But go off." Zoya looked between us, panic showing again. "You're not even listening. I was scared. I made mistakes. But you're acting like I'm the only one who did something wrong." "You are," I said plainly. "And you know it." She swallowed hard. "We can work through this. We just need to talk without all the noise." "There wouldn't have been noise if you hadn't brought an audience to the restaurant twice," I said. You don't want talking. You want a reaction. Mira stepped forward. She apologized. Not to me, I said, cutting her off. Only to the crowd. Zoya shot Mira a desperate look, like she needed backup. But Mira didn't say anything else. She just folded her arms tighter, realizing her lines weren't landing anymore. Everyone is judging me now, Zoya said, voice breaking. Do you even care what it's been like for me? You made it public, I said. You wanted attention. You got attention. She opened her mouth again, but nothing coherent came out. For the first time since I met her, she looked genuinely lost. Not dramatic, not acting, just lost. Because there was no audience left to rescue her. Not Kira, not Mira, not her friends who quietly unfollowed her, not the strangers who read the truth and walked away. This was the moment she realized she had burned the entire stage down herself. I stepped back inside. We're done, I said. Please don't show up here again. She stared for a long second, waiting for me to soften, waiting for the old me, the builder, the fixer, the one who patched every crack she made. I wasn't that person anymore. Eventually, she turned around and walked back to the parking lot. Mira followed, and for the first time, she didn't say a single snide word. They both looked smaller without the spotlight they depended on. After that day, Mira faded out of the social circle entirely. People had finally connected the dots and realized she'd been stirring the pot for years. Without Zoya shielding her, she had no footing. She sank quietly and completely. Zoya tried posting a few more vague stories about growth and new chapters, but the engagement never recovered. People were polite but distant. No hype, no emotional audience, no stage. As for me, life felt clearer, lighter. My days weren't built around fixing someone else's mood or managing someone else's image. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She wanted freedom. I just made sure it came with the bill. And that was enough. A few months after everything ended, life got quiet again. No constant calls, no vague posts to decode, no chaos disguised as love. I woke up earlier, worked out more, actually enjoyed my own company. The silence that used to feel like loss started to feel like peace. People stopped asking about Zoya once they realized there wasn't going to be some dramatic reunion. Kira texted me once to say she'd cut contact completely and that she was finally doing better too. Dax kept me grounded, reminding me that calm doesn't mean boring, it means stable. Zoya eventually moved cities. I heard it through someone mutual, then forgot about it an hour later. Mira vanished online, her curated empire gone with her. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. No last words, no revenge post, no explanation, just space. Sometimes people ask if I'd do it differently. I wouldn't. Walking away wasn't about winning. It was about finally realizing I didn't owe anyone a performance. She wanted freedom, and I gave it to her. The difference was, I learned how to live in mine. And this time, no one was watching. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.